Hello everyone, and today we'll be doing an overview slash review of the Super Mario 3D All-Stars for Nintendo Switch. And first up, from 1996, originally on the Nintendo 64, is Super Mario 64, which was a launch title which came out here, of course, Japan, America, and the rest of the world. Before it came out in 96 in America, I actually saw this game in one of the game stores back way back when, and it was in an import store, and of course a Japanese version. Fortunately, there wasn't too much reading that was needed, and I remember seeing this game for the first time and it was completely gobsmacked. At that time, of course, we're so used to Super Nintendo, Genesis, and we did have some 3D games with the 32X, but nothing to this extent where it was a full 3D world. And of course, seeing that, this basically cemented my decision to pick up a Nintendo 64 when it first launched. And we have received some re-releases since then. This game has come out on the DS for the Mario DS version, which did not look the best, and it controlled even worse because it was pretty tough to control on digital, even using the stylus. It was of course also released on the Wii via the eShop there, and while it was decent for back then, it was really dark as far as the video emulation, but of course at that time beggars couldn't be choosers. And today we're treated to a wonderful version of Mario 64. Now, could Nintendo have done a bit more? I would say yes, because I would be nitpicking. It does run in a 4:3 frame, which I would have preferred at least 16:9 widescreen. But again, beggars can't be choosers. I would have also loved to have 60 frames per second, but I know that probably would have changed some of the gameplay would be needed to be updated as well. That said, it's a great game. There are sharper textures, some art enhancements to the signposts, things of that nature. There is a little bit of sound lag that Digital Foundry had noticed. Personally, it's so minute, unfortunately, I don't notice it as much, especially while you're busy playing and trying to stay alive. It is, again, 30 frames per second, just like the original. It would have been nice to have 60. The controls are a little easier. It took me a little while to get used to playing this. I did play it on the Pro Controller. I haven't played it handheld this particular game yet, but again, it was a lot easier than, of course, trying to play it on a DS. Part of me does wish that maybe you could plug in an N64 USB controller just for old time's sake. But other than that, though, everything that especially if you've played this game before, have remembered or thought about, especially wearing my rose tinted glasses, as I am a fan of this game. In fact, a huge fan, which is why I purchased this game. Easily did not disappoint as far as the gameplay, sound. Some people were saying it's muffled. Fortunately, I was playing it on a surround sound system and it sounded fine to me. A game will give you many hours, easily anywhere between, goodness, I think I spent at least 20 hours way back in the day and only collected half the stars of the 100 stars before I stopped playing. So this for me is great to have in your collection. I do recommend picking up this collection, of course. And next up, from 2002 is Super Mario Sunshine. Now this game I played on the GameCube. I actually still have it on my GameCube, and it definitely does not look this nice, even when played with an HDMI adapter and on my GameCube, as it's in 4:3. So one of the things that Nintendo did do is they increased this to a 16:9 aspect ratio, and they've actually even up-resed it up to 1080p as far as the target. They've also upscaled the videos for the movie scenes for a bit higher resolution, so it's not quite as fuzzy or as it was on the GameCube. It is the first time this game has been re-released on a console system, so I think this is basically where I think Nintendo spent the most of their development dollars, so to speak, or time. It does run at a 30 frames per second. Again, would have liked to have seen 60 frames, but that's okay. Being able to have this game with some of its unique ideas, finally, again, home, is definitely a treat, especially being able to play it on the go. This game playing on the Pro Controller no problem whatsoever. It maps really well. Instead of having the pressure sensitive buttons, the controls for the nozzle or the backpack are now split between the ZR and the R buttons. Everything that you remember from this game is pretty straightforward. It's still there. I think that's one of the nice things about this collection. While Nintendo could have done a little bit more, I'm glad that they kept the games intact, and they are definitely classics for the Nintendo series. And last but not least, we come to Super Mario Galaxy, released on the Nintendo Wii in 2007. This game itself does have a target of about 1080p as a resolution. It is, of course, fully playable with both the Joy-Cons, the Pro Controller, and even using the Switch Lite. And the reason why I mentioned those control options is due to the pointier system, which you see there as the blue star on the screen. You actually use motion controls if you're using the Nintendo Switch Pro Controller, or if you're using the Switch Lite in handheld motion. And unfortunately, it's not quite as intuitive to use the Pro Controls, the motion control system. That said, if you do, of course, have the Switch in docked mode, you can separate the Joy-Cons, and it feels a lot better that way. The game itself runs at a blissful 60 frames per second, which I wished both Mario Sunshine and Super Mario 64 ran at, but I am, of course, glad that this runs at 60. Again, as I mentioned, it does reach at least a 1080p resolution. Some of the videos have been re-rendered to a higher rate, much like Super Mario Sunshine. And like most of this collection, all of the... Alright, so that was a quick overview of all three games. All three games are emulated, so they weren't basically, ported over from scratch to run on the Switch. The one that did receive the most as far as care from Nintendo was probably Super Mario Sunshine, especially since it's never been re-released anywhere else. And of course, they also transitioned it to 16 by 9 as far as the aspect ratio. That said, the emulation here is fairly decent for all three games. And the wonderful thing about that, especially as it comes to the future, hopefully that means that Nintendo, since these have been released and have done fairly well, is that they'll release more Nintendo 64, GameCube, and Wii games in the future. Hopefully on the eShop, if not at least on Nintendo Switch Online. Would have loved to have those as, of course, free games as long as you're an online member. Now, as far as value, it does, of course, retail for $59.99, and it's only on sale limitedly till March of 2021, which I think is pretty lame, but Nintendo will do what they do to help kind of boost their, physical year for 2020. That said, I do wish the game was closer to 40 to 50 for such older titles, because I do remember on the Wii U, Super Mario 64 was, I believe, $9.99 or $12.99. So, again, paying $60, pretty much $20 a piece, is a little high. I did just pick this game up both on physical and digital, just because that Nintendo, of course, will stop publishing the game both digitally and physically in March of 2021. I'm actually still waiting for my physical version, even though I pre-ordered it the day of announcement. I won't be getting it till it looks like, goodness, next week. Today is Friday the 18th. That said, if you are a Mario fan, and if you're trying to introduce your kids or the next generation to really the advent of true 3D worlds, as far as when it first came out chronologically, especially in the Mario universe, this is a collection not to be missed for your Switch. I definitely recommend it. Please like and subscribe, and thanks for watching this quick overview.